Florida State hosted an absolutely massive recruiting weekend this past Saturday as they faced the Miami Hurricanes in what sounds like one of the greatest Doak Campbell atmospheres in recent memory. Now, I personally didn't go to the game, but I've heard from people that were there, and they've said that they've never seen Doak quite like that. And it's exactly what you want when you're hosting over 100 recruits. I've seen some recruits say that was the best environment they've been in all year, that the ground was rumbling even. So, Florida State fans definitely showed out at a great time. And speaking of recruits, let's dive into it. Now, coming out of such a big weekend, you'd expect some recruiting buzz, and it's here in spades for Florida State right now. I'm going to go ahead and say that this game could have been the most important game/weekend of Mike Norvell's career so far. Not just because of beating in-state rival Miami, but also just the recruiting momentum that was gained here. Most notably is, of course, the number one player in the country and five-star receiver Jeremiah Smith, a guy that you all know we've talked about a ton on here, and he's really the guy that everyone's talking about right now. I've always felt that Florida State's in a really good spot with him and maybe the biggest threat to flip him from Ohio State, and I feel like those chances only increased this weekend. Smith has said himself that he feels Coleman is the best receiver in the country, and that's saying something considering Ohio State has Marvin Harrison Jr. But he's also said that he thinks Mike Norvell is the best coach in college football, and with the way the season is going for Florida State right now, I think it's further cementing Smith's confidence in Mike Norvell and in being a skill player in Mike's offense and just confidence in the Florida State program as a whole. I think we always knew the on-field product for Florida State was going to play a key role in this recruitment, and really most recruitments of this caliber, but I think we knew it would take a magical season to build this kind of buzz, and here we are, right in the middle of it, and enjoying every second, and it seems the recruits are too. Smith was interviewed after the game on Saturday and said himself that Florida State was actually on top for him, and even confirmed that he would be back for another multi-day visit in December. That means Florida State should get the last shot at him before heading into National Signing Day, which I think is a major, major advantage here. I find it telling that he chose to come to FSU over Ohio State, who hosted Michigan State this past weekend, and will be in Gainesville when Florida State plays the Gators at the end of the month. Ohio State plays Michigan that weekend, and you would kind of think that an Ohio State commit would go to Ohio State's biggest game of the year, but instead he's going to be here watching the Noles. Now, of course, Ohio State will try to play as much defense as they can here, and obviously Ryan Hartline is a really good receivers coach. But I actually feel like Florida State might lead in this recruitment right now. And if things keep trending like this, I see Jeremiah Smith flipping and signing with FSU. Now, another five-star receiver who was on campus this weekend was Coleman, and he's currently committed to Texas A&M. He finally made his way back to Tallahassee for this matchup, and it also seemed to leave a good impression on him. He said that Florida State has been very consistent in recruiting him and staying in good contact, and with the coaching turnover, obviously A&M fired Jimbo Fisher. There's definitely some uncertainty on that staff there for sure, and I think Coleman is looking at all options at this point, and Florida State has been very involved from the start. I think you see him make his way back to Tallahassee at least one more time before signing day, and if the Noles make a big push here, I think they're definitely a threat to flip him. Auburn is also another school that's heavily involved, and I've been on the Texas A&M boards, and they seem to have very, very low confidence that Coleman actually sticks with A&M. There's some debate on whether Florida State or Auburn is the biggest threat, but I could very easily see this turning into yet another Auburn versus Florida State battle, like we've already seen a few times this year. Now, one question is, Florida State already has a lot of receivers. Would they take both Smith and Coleman? Now, honestly, I think the full court press is obviously on Smith. I think he's more likely than Coleman anyway, but if both guys did want in, I think the staff absolutely makes room and takes both guys. I just don't know because both of these guys would warrant some healthy NIL offers, and I just don't know that Florida State will find it necessary to get into a bidding war over both, especially with Florida State already having several other talented prospects at receiver committed. But it's definitely another interesting one, and we're going to have to see how it plays out. Now, this one I find super interesting, actually. Five-star defensive lineman L.J. McCrae was back on campus at FSU just 2 weeks after choosing the Florida Gators over the Seminoles. Obviously, the Noles have been involved with him since the beginning and are definitely still pushing hard to land him. Now, some have said that this was just a free visit for him to come to and enjoy. He was with his friend and teammate four-star safety Zay Mincy, who was also visiting FSU. And at first, I'll admit, I was skeptical as well. I thought it didn't seem like much more than just a free trip to me. But then he stayed all day Sunday and hung out with Mike Norvell personally, which I found interesting. It certainly doesn't hurt that he had already watched FSU beat Miami and enjoyed an electric Doak Campbell Stadium, but also Florida got another loss to LSU in a game where their defense gave up over 600 yards of offense to one player. That's the same player that Florida State starting defense held to just 17 points. Maybe that has him second guessing a little bit. There's definitely been a few other Gator commits that have flipped. You've seen Nasir Johnson flip to UGA on Wednesday, Wardell Mack flip to Texas, and Javonte Waller flipped his commitment to Auburn. So that's already 3 flips. Definitely lots of Gator commits aren't liking what they see there. And Florida's in a major struggle to even find bowl eligibility right now. I definitely think it's still too early and too sudden to say that Florida State is actually likely to flip him. But it does sound like he'll be making a return visit to Tallahassee again before signing day. And that's definitely a big one to monitor moving forward. Now, this one wouldn't necessarily qualify as a flip anymore, I guess, technically. But 4-star top 100 DB Kai Bates, who up until a few days ago was committed to LSU, but was in town for the FSU game before decommitting from the Tigers. He's another guy that Florida State's been in on for a while now, and again, just never stopped recruiting him despite the fact that he pledged to another program during the summer. And it seems that Florida State is definitely the school currently trending for him right now. Michael Langston, an FSU recruiting analyst for On3, already put in a prediction for Bates to commit to FSU, and it definitely looks that way as we sit here on Thursday. Now, I believe he has a visit scheduled to Tennessee, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida State try to shut that one down before the weekend. But even if he does go, Tennessee's playing Georgia, who is probably going to annihilate Tennessee. So I don't see him being too impressed after that one. But I definitely think Florida State wants to close this one out sooner rather than later and get him locked in and cement what is already a very elite DB haul for FSU in 2024. So that's really the main ones, guys. Obviously, there's a ton of recruiting buzz coming in for lots of the players that were in attendance this weekend. And I'll have more videos coming out on some of those other guys soon. But I wanted to get on here and talk about some of these flip candidates in particular, especially because these are some of the bigger fish left on Florida State's board right now. And I'll say it's looking good for a lot of them. And if FSU can keep winning, go show out in the playoffs, I like their chances to close out on at least a few of these guys mentioned. And already sitting here with the number 3 class nationally, it could get even better. This 2024 class is shaping up to be almost prime Jimbo Fisher recruiting days, and it's awesome to see. Winning cures all, just like we all knew, and we're seeing the results of that now as tons of elite players are wanting to come to Tallahassee and be part of the climb. We'll definitely keep you guys posted on this stuff as it all unfolds. Maybe even some of it happens sooner than later. So you definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to keep up, and as always, go Noles.